Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. Tonight we will do an overview of the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu in pursuance of our Bhakti Shastri degree. And tonight we will do an overview of the book, the Nectar of Devotion. Now, when we look at the book, we've covered the first section of the book, which is called the eastern side of the ocean of the Nectar of Devotion. Now, as you know, we've covered 19 chapters, and we probably had, I think, 19 or 20 classes covering these chapters. So it's quite a substantial study. So we've covered 19 chapters, and the question which I've received from members of our study group is what will be covered in the exam, because 19 chapters is a lot to read over. There's a lot to familiarize yourself with. So we'll make it easy for you tonight. What I will cover in this overview class tonight will constitute the material that you will need to learn in preparation for your exam. Now, your exam will be in 2 weeks today, because it is the 4th of September, 2024. Next Wednesday is Radhashtami, the appearance day of Srimati Radharani herself. That's the 11th, next Wednesday. So we won't have a class next Wednesday. The following Wednesday, which will be the 18th of September, we will have an overview class. Oh, sorry, we will have the, tonight's the overview class. We'll have the closed book exam, which will take 2 hours. I'll send that to you on the 18th in the evening, and you'll have 2 hours to take the exam, and then you can email it back to me. And also your minimum of 500 word open book essay will be due on the 18th also. So you have 2 weeks to complete your essay, and you have 2 weeks to study for your exam. So tonight I will cover what you need to especially focus on for the exam. Now, you should study the whole 19 chapters. You should become familiar with the whole 19 chapters. But if you need, or if you're confused about what to especially focus on in terms of your examination, that's what we'll cover tonight. So if you have any questions or any comments as we go tonight, then please ask. So the title of the book in Sanskrit is Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu. So you'll need to familiarize yourself with the meaning in Sanskrit of the book. Bhakti ras. Bhakti refers to devotion to Krishna, as we covered way back when we first discussed this. Bhakti refers to devotion to Krishna, and rasa refers to, Prabhupada often translates it as mellow. Mellow, or it means taste. Mellow. It means juice, the word rasa, like rasgula or rasmalai. Taste, mellow, juice, where pleasure is derived from. So bhakti ras means the pleasure which is derived or devotional service to Krishna, to God. Amrita literally means without death. Mrita means death. Amrita means without death. So it means Prabhupada translates it as nectar. Nectar means, you can take a beverage. So Soma Ras, for example, which is a beverage they drink on the moon planet, that is called Amrita. In other words, it promotes immortality. It promotes divine strength, and not on the spiritual platform, but materially, it gives you strength. It's a tonic. Amrita means something which is nectar. It's good for you. It increases vitality and can even produce immortality. Now, in this case, Bhakti Ras, the science of performing devotional service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that will produce Amrita, or immortality. It will lead us to the spiritual world if done properly and intensely enough. Sindhu, the word Sindhu refers to ocean. Bhakti Ras, the nectar of devotion. Amrita, Sindhu, means it is an ocean of rasa. It is an ocean of Bhakti Ras Amrita. The nectar of devotion is an ocean, right? It is unlimited practically. Like, imagine trying to drink some tonic or some Amrita, some nectar, which will give you immortality. Imagine having an ocean of that tonic at your disposal. So that is literally what the title of the book is, Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu. Prabhupada translates that as the nectar of devotion. So he doesn't really include the word Sindhu, which means ocean, in the title of the book. He says the nectar of devotion. He doesn't really use that word. But the Sanskrit word is Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu, those 4 words. So you need to be familiar with those, the meaning of the words, the meaning of the book. Now you've been given 4 verses to memorize. They're called KMVs, or key memory verses. These verses will appear on the exam. So you need to familiarize yourself with these verses because they're very important verses, and they will assist you in understanding bhakti or devotion, devotional service. So you're meant to, you'll need to, if you want to get full marks, when do we get questioned for open book exam? The open book exam, the topic is an overview. For you to write an overview or a summary in 500 words minimum of the 19 chapters which we've covered. So that's the topic for your open book exam. I've mentioned that before. So you'll need to, if you want to get full marks, then if you can quote the Sanskrit and English on the exam, you'll get better marks. If you can't do the Sanskrit and English, if you do the English, then you'll get lesser marks, but you will still receive marks for the English. So you need to memorize the KMVs, or the 4 key memory verses. So there are, what we're studying here is what we call the eastern side of the ocean. The book is divided into the east, south, west, and northern parts. So there's 4 parts of the book. We're only covering the eastern division, which means the first part of the book. Now, the first part of the book has waves. Rupa Goswami has divided the topic into 4 waves, which are called Samanya Bhakti, Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. Now, you'll need to memorize this for your exam. Samanya Bhakti means a general description of devotional service. That's how the book begins, with a general description of devotional service. That's the definition of Samanya Bhakti. Next we have Sadhana Bhakti. Sadhana Bhakti sadhana means practice, devotional service in practice. That is called Sadhana Bhakti. That is the second wave, or the second part of the first section of the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion. So that section is divided into two parts, which is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. We discussed this in the classes. But you'll just need to remember that the second part is called Sadhana Bhakti, and you'll need to explain what that is called, devotional service in practice. Then the third wave of the eastern side of the ocean is called Bhava Bhakti. Bhava refers to ecstatic love for Krishna, or ecstatic emotional feeling for Krishna. That is called Bhava. So Bhava Bhakti. Serving Krishna with ecstatic emotion. Special ecstatic emotions, to serve Krishna with the emotion of ecstasy, of being his devotee in a particular rasa. So that is called Bhava Bhakti. Serving Krishna with ecstatic emotion. And the fourth wave is called Prema Bhakti. Prema refers to love of Godhead, which is the goal of life. That is the goal of all of our devotional service, is to attain Krishna Prema, love for Krishna. So the fourth type of bhakti, which is discussed in the fourth wave of this eastern section of the Nectar of Devotion, is called Prema Bhakti. So Samanya Bhakti, devotional service in a general description of devotional service. Sadhana Bhakti, devotional service in practice. Bhava Bhakti, devotional service in ecstasy. Prema Bhakti, devotional service in love of Godhead. So you'll need to familiarize yourself with these four for your examination. Then you'll need to be very familiar with what we call the Paribhasa Sutra, or the governing verse of the Nectar of Devotion. In Sanskrit, that verse is Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Kamadyanavritam Anukuyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. So this is the perfect definition of devotional service. This is Rupa Goswami's own perfect definition of devotional service. Now, you'll need to familiarize yourself with this particular verse, especially because this verse governs the whole book. The whole book is based upon this verse. It's the seed verse, the seminal verse of the entire book. So you need to become familiar with the construct of the verse. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Anyabhilashita means devotional service must be devoid of other desires, except for the desire to serve and please Krishna. Anyabhilashita shunya. Shunya means, like we know in Prabhupada's pranam mantra, nivase shunyavad. Shunya means devoid of, or void. So devotional service must be devoid of other types of desires, material desires. Jnana kamad yana vritam. Jnana, kama, and adi means desires pertaining to jnana, desires pertaining to karma, material desires, imperfect spiritual philosophy, like Mayavad philosophy, for an example, imperfect spiritual conclusions. That will contaminate our devotional service if that's there. Material desires, karma, that will contaminate our devotional service if it's there. The desire to perform other processes as opposed to just pure bhakti or devotional service, that will also contaminate our bhakti. Anukul, the word anukul means favorable. And we described this in our earlier classes, that devotional service must be favorable to please Krishna. You must do it in a favorable way. Krishna, I want to serve and please you. If we don't have that kind of mentality, then bhakti is not being performed properly. We must be favorable, anukul, towards Krishna. Anukuyena Krishna Anushilanam. Now, this is very important. This word Krishna means devotional service must be focused on Krishna. Krishna includes his other incarnations and his devotees. Devotional service must be directed towards Krishna. Anukuyena, with a favorable intent. Anukuyena Krishna Anushilanam. Now, this word Anushilanam is very important. It means the cultivation of following devotional service as an active engagement. In other words, cultivation, anushilana, means we are cultivating following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. The word anu means to follow. So we're cultivating being active, performing service, following in the footsteps of previous acharyas, previous gurus. So this is the mood of bhakti, of devotional service. So this word Krishna Anushilanam is very important. So Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Uttama. Bhakti, which means devotional service. Uttama means highest. Devotional service is the highest when it is done favorably, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas for Krishna's pleasure, when we perform some active service. That cultivation of that service, that is called Uttama Bhakti, or pure devotional service. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions or comments so far? So, next there is a verse, Savopadi Vinimuktam Taparatwena Nimalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchite. This verse is taken from Narad Muni, and it is also a pure definition of pure devotional. Savopadi Vinimuktam. Upadi means bodily identification. Savopadi means all types of bodily identification. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a Australian, I'm an Indian, I'm a Mauritian, I am a doctor, a lawyer, a housewife, a mother, a father, a son, a brother, whatever the upadi is, or the bodily identification, that is false. So devotional service means to become free from all those bodily identifications. Tap paratwena nimalam. Nimala means pure. So just to have pure spiritual consciousness that I am Krishna's eternal servant. That is the perfect definition of bhakti. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevana Bhakti Uchite. We must use our senses in the service of the master of the senses. That is a perfect definition of bhakti, which is also included in this beginning section of the Nectar of Devotion, to make it clear to us what is pure devotional service. So then in chapter 1, we hear that there are 6 characteristics of Uttama Bhakti, or pure devotional service. So what are these 6 characteristics? The first 2 are contained within Sadhana Bhakti, the second 2 are contained within Bhava Bhakti, and the third 2 are contained within Prema Bhakti. Now you'll need to memorize these 6. The first one is called Kleshagni. Kleshagni, it means, I'll give you the perfect definition of Kleshagni. It means it provides relief from material distress. Klesha means distress. So devotional service that will, when you begin to practice sadhana, the first 2 qualities of sadhana are Kleshagni and Shubhada. Kleshagni means it liberates you from distress. That's something I think all of us have experienced in devotional service, that it removes our distress. We're not distressed anymore. Anxiety goes away when you serve Krishna, when you focus on serving Krishna. The second quality is Shubhada. Shubhada is defined as one attains auspiciousness. Shubha means auspiciousness. Shubhada means auspicious qualities or characteristics will manifest in your person more as you perform devotional service. Shubha. Shubhada means you will get more and more good qualities. That's the power of bhakti. That's the power of devotional service. More and more good qualities will manifest in your consciousness. Then, the third and fourth qualities of bhakti mentioned in this first chapter of devotion, they pertain to devotional service on the platform of bhava bhakti. They are moksha lakhutu krit and sudurlabha. Now, moksha lakhuta krit means when one performs devotional service on the platform of bhava bhakti, even the happiness of liberation becomes insignificant. Moksha means liberation. Lakhu means light, insignificant. It's insignificant. Even to be liberated, to attain moksha, liberation, that becomes insignificant for a devotee. A devotee is not attracted or concerned by that kind of a thing. That's the power of devotional service. So that's the third quality, moksha lakhuta krit. The fourth quality, which you also get at the level of bhava bhakti, is sudulabha, which means it is very rare. It is rare to attain bhava bhakti, sudulabha. Because bhava bhakti means you understand your eternal relationship with Krishna, your siddha swarup. You understand your eternal relationship with Krishna. That comes at the level of bhava. So we need to cultivate that mood. We need to cultivate that quality of attaining bhava bhakti. It's rare to attain it, but that's what we need to focus on, attaining. Then there is the next two qualities, 5 and 6, are Sandrananda Visheshatma. This is two qualities of bhakti you attain at the level of prema. Sandrananda Visheshatma means it imbues one with indescribable bliss. Devotional service becomes indescribably blissful when we focus on serving Krishna with prema or love. When you develop love of Godhead, the bliss is indescribable. It is unlimited bliss. So that is the potency and the power. Then 6 is Sri Caitanya, the 6th quality, which you can attain at the level of prema bhakti. It means it attracts Krishna himself. Sri Krishna Kashani. It literally means controls Krishna. Krishna becomes controlled and attracted. So that's the potency or the power of prema bhakti. Love of Godhead attracts Krishna, controls Krishna. So these 6 qualities, Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Lakutakrit, Sudulabha, Sandrananda Visheshatma, and Sri Krishna Kashani. You need to memorize these 6 levels of bhakti. Now, if you can't remember the Sanskrit, you at least need to remember the English equivalent, but you'll get higher marks if you can quote the Sanskrit also. So you'll need to understand these different qualities, and you'll need to understand what is the purpose of our sadhana. Because this section of the Nectar of Devotion, this side of the ocean, it primarily focuses on sadhana bhakti, practicing devotional service. And description of sadhana or practicing bhakti, practicing devotional service, we will find that the practice of devotional service, why do we practice devotional service? What's the purpose of the practice? What is the purpose of sadhana? The purpose of sadhana is to attain sajya. Sajya means the goal. And what is the goal of our practice of devotional service? It is bhava bhakti or prema bhakti, which means to develop love of Godhead. So you have to be familiar with this understanding. Sadhana leads to sajja. Practice, sadhana means practice. Practice leads to the goal or perfection, which is prema bhakti, love for Krishna. So Rupa Goswami mentions that devotional service is governed by one basic principle, which is mentioned in chapter 2 of the Nectar of Devotion. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. This is the overarching instructions which we are given, which govern everything we do in our devotional service. We do devotional service so that we always remember Krishna and so that we never forget Krishna. So that is the definition which is given there by Rupa Goswami. Always remember Krishna. That is the goal of our devotional service. Then in chapter 2, also it describes that, and we discussed this back in the classes on chapter 2, It describes different levels of advancement in devotional service. Right? Different levels of advancement means there are three types of devotees, or three levels of devotional advancement: Kanishta Adhikari, Majjhima Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. Now, Kanishta Adhikari means a neophyte devotee. A Majjhima Adhikari means a mid-level or mid-range devotee, and Uttama Adhikari means a very advanced devotee. Now, we described there are three ways of defining or differentiating or understanding who is more advanced and who is less advanced. There is faith. If you look back through your notes and if you look back at the earlier classes, there is faith, chanting, and realization. These are the three ways, the three categories that we use to understand who is more advanced and who is less advanced. The first is faith. Someone who is a neophyte devotee, a Kanishta Adhikari, he has faith in the deity, he has faith in the guru, but he may not have so much faith in other devotees. And his faith is weak. He cannot substantiate his faith based on scripture. Right? His faith is weak. It's not strong faith. And because his faith is not strong, he can sometimes lose his faith and move away from devotional service, devotional activities. And sometimes we see in Krishna consciousness, people leave the Hare Krishna movement. So why do they leave the Hare Krishna movement? People leave the Hare Krishna movement. Why? Because they have a lack of faith in Krishna, a lack of faith in the process of bhakti. So this, if someone does leave, this means they're a Kanishta Adhikari, generally. It means their faith has not developed properly. Now, the second level of devotee, the Majjhima Adhikari, he has strong faith. His faith is very strong. He has deep faith, but he may not be able to substantiate that faith based on scripture. In other words, he may not be able to quote scripture extensively. He's not learned enough necessarily to quote, to substantiate or support his faith, but his faith is very strong. That's a Majjhima Adhikari. And an Uttama Adhikari, he has extremely strong faith, right? Is a pure devotee of Krishna, but also he is able to substantiate his faith based on scriptural reference. He can say, in the Bhagavad Gita it says like this, or in the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu it says, or the Bhagavatam says like this, or Chaitanya Charitamrita says like this. Right? So this is called Uttama Adhikari, someone who has very strong faith. So faith is one way that we can understand who is on what level of devotional service. Then there is chanting. Someone who is a Kanishta Adhikari may not chant regularly and may not have very fixed up chanting. And he may commit offenses while chanting. So therefore he struggles with chanting because he commits offenses. There are 10 offenses in chanting the holy name of Krishna, which we spoke about, which are mentioned here in the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu. So he may commit those offenses. Secondly, the second level of devotee, the Majjhima Adhikari, his chanting is on the platform of what we call namabas. Namabas means clearing. He knows what the offenses are and he diligently tries to avoid committing those offenses. And he chants a very fixed number of rounds on a regular basis. Then thirdly, we have the Uttama Adhikari. Uttama Adhikari means the highest devotee. And his chanting is so powerful and so fixed and so pure, he is cultivating Shuddhanam, or pure chanting, that when he chants, his chanting is so pure, it inspires others to chant. Others become inspired to chant when they hear him chanting. So this is how chanting differentiates the different levels of devotee. So we have faith, chanting, and realization. Realization means, how do we see other devotees? The Kanishta Adhikari, the neophyte devotee, he cannot appreciate how advanced others are. Who's more advanced than him, who's less advanced, and he doesn't know how to relate devotees properly, according to advancement. Then we have the Madhyamadhikari. And his realization is that he understands how to associate with everyone. He understands who's more advanced, who is less advanced, who is an equal, who is envious and should be avoided. He understands how everyone fits in properly. Then we have the Uttama Adhikari. His realization is that he is so advanced in Krishna consciousness, it is said that he doesn't even differentiate, because he sees everyone as being Krishna's servant, and therefore everyone is more connected to Krishna than him. So he has a very advanced level of devotion. So this is how to understand. You'll need to understand how to differentiate between the different types of devotees: the Kanishta Adhikari, the Madhyama Adhikari, and the Uttama Adhikari. Then in chapter 4, there is a discussion about how one must give up jnana and karma, which are distractions to our bhakti. Right? Karma means fruitive desires or material desires. And jnana means philosophical speculation. So as a devotee, we need to differentiate. We need to understand that for devotional service to be pure, we have to give up material desires and we have to give up philosophical false philosophies. So devotional service needs to remain pure, not covered by jnana or karma. So you'll need to understand this point for your exam. Now, it describes, Rupa Goswami describes in the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu, that devotional service is able to be practiced by anyone and everyone. Caitanya Mahaprabhu did not differentiate who was qualified and who was unqualified to take to the path of bhakti. This is a very important point, that anyone is qualified to take to the path of bhakti or devotional service. Anyone can perform bhakti. Anyone can perform devotional service. One simply has to have faith in the spiritual master and Krishna. And then one is able to practice bhakti or devotional service. So this is Lord Chaitanya's mood. Because we've seen historically that in India, that there is differentiation. That people sometimes say that certain people are not qualified to perform bhakti and other people are qualified to perform bhakti based on bodily conception. You know, I'm born in the Brahmana family, I can perform devotional service. You're born in the Sutra family, you are not qualified even to enter into the temple. these kind of philosophies are propagated. So this is not the mood of Lord Chaitanya, and it's not the mood of the Vedas, the Shastra, and it is not the mood of what we learn from the Nectar of Devotion or the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu. We are learning that anyone is qualified to practice bhakti as long as he has faith in the Guru and Krishna and he follows the regulated principles of bhakti or devotional service. Then we have the 64 items of bhakti. You remember we discussed these. These begin in chapter 6 and up until chapter 13. These are described. 64 items of bhakti. Now, Rupa Goswami explains that the first 3 are extremely important, and for your exam, you'll need to memorize the first 3 items of bhakti. This is extremely important. Now, there are 64 items of bhakti. You don't have to memorize the entire 64 items of bhakti. Obviously, that's not necessary for your exam. You don't have to memorize all 64. But you do need to familiarize yourself with them because you will be questioned about some of them. So you'll need to memorize at least some of them. I don't expect you to memorize all 64, but at least memorize some of them. And you must be familiar for your exam, especially for the first 3 items of bhakti. Rupa Goswami explains the first 20 items are the bhakti dwara, or the gateway to bhakti. The first 20 are very important. And of the first 20, the first 10 are very important. And of the first 10, the first 3 are essential for bhakti. They're the most important. That's why they're mentioned first. So the first 3 of the 64 items is Guru Pada Shraya, which means accepting the shelter of the bona fide spiritual master. So to begin bhakti, you need to have Guru. You need to have a spiritual master. Manju's asking, will we be asked what they are or what is their benefit? Both. You'll need to understand both. So the first is Guru Padashraya, which means taking shelter of a guru. Devotional service begins by taking shelter of a spiritual master, because if you don't have guru, if you don't have a guide in devotional service, how will you progress in bhakti and devotional service? How will you progress, right, in devotional service if you do not have guru? Right? So you need spiritual master in order to progress in devotional service, to be taught how to perform devotional service. The second quality is Sri Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam, which means you have to accept initiation from a bona fide spiritual master and receive instruction from him. Diksha means initiation. Shiksha means instruction or guidance. That is the second most important item of bhakti. Because if you're committed to the process of bhakti, you will take initiation. This shows your commitment, just like marriage. If you're committed to someone, you marry the person. If you're committed to spiritual life, you take initiation from the guru. And shiksha means instruction. Sometimes we see devotees, they take initiation, but they don't approach the guru to receive instructions and follow those instructions. And therefore, they don't progress properly in devotional service. How will you progress if you don't follow? And if you don't follow the instructions of your guru, or if you don't even receive instructions from your guru? because you're not associating with your guru. How will you advance properly? Third, the third item of bhakti, which is the other one you must memorize and understand, is serving Vishwambena Guru Seva, which means you serve the spiritual master with faith and confidence. We serve the guru in the mood of friendship and with faith. So you do service for the guru, right? You take shelter, you take initiation, you take instruction, then you do service for the guru. That's how you advance in Krishna consciousness. So you must memorize these first three items. And then you need to be familiar with the other 64, not memorize the whole 64, but you'll need to know others as well. So become familiar with the list. Choose some, become familiar with them, be ready to answer questions based upon those items of bhakti. Then you'll need to, one of the key memory verses is the Yukta Vairagya verse, which describes Nirbandha Krishna, Krishna Sambandha. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchate. It describes Yukta Vairagya. So you'll need to memorize this verse because it will describe Yukta Vairagya, the principle of Yukta Vairagya, which is very important to understand in our philosophy. Yukta Vairagya refers to engaging everything in Krishna's service that can be engaged in Krishna's service. That is called Yukta Vairagya. Renunciation, the word Vairagya means to renounce. Yukta means to engage or connect. So we renounce those things we cannot connect to Krishna, those things we can connect to Krishna, we engage them in Krishna's service. That is the philosophy of the Hare Krishna movement. It is the perfect path of renunciation, Krishna Sambandha, connecting things to Krishna. And then, if we go to chapter 16 of the Nectar of Devotion, which is chapter 15 and 16 discussions on the topic of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And we discussed this, we had classes on this, that Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti means Anuga means to follow in the footsteps of those who have Rag Bhakti. And we described Raga Bhakti means Raga means spontaneous attachment to Krishna. It means following the footsteps of the Rag Atmika devotees, or the devotees who have spontaneous attraction or attachment. In other words, the residents of Vrindavan. So Rag Anuga Bhakti means to follow in the footsteps and learn to become spontaneously attracted to Krishna, following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. That is called Raganuga Bhakti, that practice. Now, there are three verses, and you'll need to familiarize yourself with these three verses. These three verses describe the process of Raganuga Bhakti. This is in chapter 16 of the Nectar of Devotion. So the first verse describes the devotee should always think of Krishna within himself, and one should choose a very dear devotee who is a servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan. One should constantly engage in topics about the servitor and his loving relationship to Krishna, and one should live in Vrindavan. However, if one cannot physically live in Vrindavan, he should mentally live there. So, the first item of Raganuga Bhakti is that we should constantly discuss about Krishna, about the particular devotees of Krishna that we aspire to follow in Vrindavan. And in our mind or physically, we should live in Vrindavan, and we should meditate on these devotees and discuss about them. This is the first principle of Raganuga Bhakti. The second verse describes the advanced devotee who is inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna in Vrindavan. He should execute service externally as a regulative devotee, as well as internally from his self-realized position. Thus, he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. So, while we're meditating on the eternal residence of Vrindavan, we should, in our meditation internally in Raganuga Bhakti, we should follow in their service mood and their footsteps. And externally, we should perform our devotional service, remembering them while doing our practices of bhakti, like deity worship, for example. And then the third verse is, learned acharyas know that the 64 practices of Vaidhi Bhakti, headed by hearing and chanting, are also useful in Raganuga Bhakti. So Raganuga Bhakti means that we continue to follow all the 64 items of sadhana bhakti, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, but we practice those items with the internal meditation of following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. So that is the basic understanding of Raganuga sadhana bhakti. It's described in these three verses. You'll need to familiarize yourself with these three verses, with this concept of Raganuga bhakti. And then, finally, it's described in chapter 18, the practice of Bhava Bhakti, which is very advanced devotional service, where one begins to realize his eternal relationship with Krishna. So when one rises to this platform, how do we understand if someone's actually on this platform? Rupa Goswami in chapter 18 describes there are 9 reliable symptoms for someone who's actually attained a level of Bhava Bhakti. So you'll need to familiarize yourself with these 9. You don't have to memorize them perfectly, but you need to be very familiar with them, because you will be examined on these, because we need to know who is actually an advanced devotee. So what are the 9 items of Bhava Bhakti? One does not waste any time in his service to Krishna. He's always engaged in service to Krishna. He perseveres. He remains tolerant and patient. Even amongst disturbance, he stays fixed in devotion to Krishna. He is detached, which means he becomes completely indifferent to sense gratification. He is prideless. So he always feels humble and unqualified to serve Krishna. He has hope against hope, which means even though he feels humble and disqualified, he has great hope that Krishna will deliver him and he will be able to one day serve Krishna eternally. He has intense eagerness to serve Krishna. He has constant attraction to chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. He is addicted to glorifying Krishna's qualities. And he is deeply attached to living in the holy Dham, in the places of Krishna's pastimes. So that's the basic subject matter that you'll need to memorize and to familiarize yourself with for your exam, which will be in 2 weeks today, on the 18th of the 18th of September. Does anyone have any questions or comments? We have a few minutes. If there's any clarification you need or any questions you need to ask, you can ask them now. It seems like everyone is satisfied with the subject matter. I've made it as clear for you as I can. Which 3 verses are you confused about? What are they? Which 3 verses though? Which chapter, which 3? The Raganuga Bhakti verses? Chapter 15 is, yeah. Where are they? Okay, they're in the Nectar of Devotion. If you read through, you'll have to look up online the waves of devotion, or you'll have to do a Google search if you want to find the actual Sanskrit for them. But Prabhupada elaborates on them in the 16th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion. So he doesn't quote them there in terms of the Sanskrit, but he does elaborate on them. If you want to break them down, you'll have to do a little bit of research yourself and find them on Google. You'll find them in the Waves of Devotional. If you do a search on Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu, you will find them. So, any other questions or comments? Will you have access to this recording so you can listen to it again? Yes. I'll ask the devotee who uploads them to upload it tomorrow, and then you'll have access from tomorrow onwards to review. So you'll have 2 weeks, but yes, it will be up soon. All the other previous lectures are up, so yeah, this one will come up soon. Any other questions? Okay. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for your sincerity and your dedication to studying in pursuance of attaining your Bhakti Shastri degree. Prabhupada would be very pleased with all of you. So I won't see you next week. We'll have Radhashtami next Wednesday, no class. And if you have any questions in between, you can contact me and I can answer them for you. And then in 2 weeks, I'll send you the exam and you can perform the exam on Wednesday evening in 2 weeks. You'll have 2 hours. Send it back to me. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all for coming. I'll see you soon.
See you on Sunday.
Yeah, see you Sunday.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
See you all soon.